The dashboard clock ticked over to 12:44 p.m. Inside the worn-out cabin of his old Chevrolet, Daniel Cross tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, like he was counting each breath. 3 cars stood ahead of him in the drive-thru lane of Burger Barrel, the fast food chain he had founded himself. But none of the employees inside had any idea that the man waiting in line was the owner, and that was exactly how Daniel wanted it. It had been 3 months since he began this secret mission, disguising himself as an ordinary customer. He wore old jeans, a plain t-shirt, and a faded baseball cap that looked like it came from a thrift store. No fancy watch, no corporate polo, nothing to hint that he was a successful entrepreneur who had once built a 30-location restaurant empire from a single burger cart. After countless sleepless nights, Daniel was now a stranger, a ghost inside the very empire he had created. At 46, with peppered stubble and deep crow's feet etched around his eyes, he bore the marks of those brutal years. But that was also what set him apart: resilience. And today, just like every day of this journey, he was back in character as an anonymous customer, searching for one thing: the truth. The line inched forward. Daniel glanced at the dashboard clock again. 6 minutes and 38 seconds, well past the 4-minute limit he himself had written into the training manual. A small lapse, yes, but one he'd seen repeated across several locations. And it was beginning to worry him. For speed, still slow, he muttered, jotting it down in a small leather notebook in his center console. The handwriting was a little messy, but every word carried a weight of disappointment. He had expected to find minor problems: an employee with a bad attitude, maybe some corner cutting during rush hour. But what he had uncovered was far worse: a system breaking down. Sluggish, spiritless, and worse still, infected with apathy that seemed baked into the workplace culture. The car ahead rolled forward to the pickup window. Daniel inched closer to the drive-thru speaker mounted on the brick wall. A burst of static, then silence. He waited. A few seconds. Then a minute. "Excuse me? Is anyone there?" Daniel leaned slightly out his window, keeping his tone calm, but his brows were starting to furrow. Some more faint static. Then a voice in the background, not speaking to him, but to someone else inside. "I don't care how long the line is. Take your break now while I'm still offering." A chill ran down Daniel's spine. He waited a bit longer, then raised his voice. "Hello?" This time, the speaker finally responded with a flat, robotic voice. "Welcome to Burger Barrel. What can I get for you today?" Daniel was just about to speak when a different voice cut through the open mic, clearer now, as if standing right beside it. A man's voice, dripping with mockery. "Gotta love these blind sheep. Wait 10 minutes for a burger that takes 30 seconds, then thank us for the honor." Daniel's grip on the wheel tightened. He recognized that voice instantly. Brett Madigan, the store manager. A man with a permanent smirk that Daniel had seen before, but never spoken to. He'd always kept an eye on him. "Sir, would you like to place your order?" the employee repeated, but Daniel wasn't listening anymore. Brett was still talking, now even closer to the microphone. "Relax. These morons can't hear anything with their engines running." Daniel sat frozen, heart pounding. A part of him wanted to drive straight to the window, reveal who he was, and watch the color drain from Brett's face the moment he realized the truth. But he didn't. Something inside whispered, "Not yet. Let it play out. Let the truth surface on its own. Information is power, and this time it might change everything." "Out sick again?" Another voice chimed in through the speaker, softer but still audible. "Sick?" Brett scoffed, his sarcasm unmistakable. "3rd time this month. What do you want me to do? He's Melissa's cousin. We're all family here, you know. Gotta keep the paychecks in the bloodline." Daniel's heart sank. Melissa. That name struck like a punch. She was the assistant manager at this very store, and that was a direct violation of Burger Barrel's strict anti-nepotism policy. a principle Daniel had carved into the company's foundation from day one. In those early, scrappy years, he had sworn his brand would never become a place where connections beat competence, a place where every employee, regardless of background, skin color, or social status, would have an equal shot to rise, based on effort and skill alone. Yet here he was, listening to a manager proudly mock that very principle. No remorse, just arrogance and entitlement. "Sir, do you want to place an order or not?" The voice snapped again, this time tinged with clear impatience. Daniel took a deep breath, steadying himself. Yeah. Sorry." He looked up at the menu board, like he was seeing it for the first time, though he had written most of those descriptions himself years ago. "I'll have a classic barrel burger, medium, just the sandwich. It'll be $4.79, second window." The speaker clicked off. Daniel rolled forward slowly, but his mind was racing. What he had just heard wasn't a bad day or a single mistake. It was a crack in the foundation, a breach of everything Burger Barrel was meant to stand for. He remembered scribbling in his old journal the day he opened his first location. Jobs aren't given, they're earned. And now, that idea was being chewed up and spat out by the very people he had trusted to uphold it. At the payment window, a young woman with streaks of purple in her hair and a nose ring took his card without looking up. Her name tag read, "Amber. You new here?" Daniel asked casually, like a regular customer making small talk. Amber shrugged. "Started last week. My brother's girlfriend's sister works in the kitchen. She got me in." Daniel nodded with a slight smile, masking the sinking feeling in his chest. Another one, hired through a connection, not on merit. He rolled forward to the pickup window. Brett came into view. Broad-shouldered, hair slicked back, Burger Barrel manager's shirt stretched tight across his frame. He was laughing, mocking someone's walk in an exaggerated manner as the staff giggled along. When he saw Daniel's car, Brett turned, grabbed a paper bag, and shoved it out the window without making eye contact. "Classic burger. Have a good one," he said, tone flat, already turning away. "Excuse me," Daniel called out. "Could I get some ketchup packets?" Brett turned back, irritation flashing in his eyes before hiding behind a forced customer service smile. "Sure thing, sir." He grabbed a handful of ketchup and tossed them into the bag. "Anything else?" Daniel hesitated. Part of him wanted to tear off the disguise, to make Brett face the truth, to confront the man who had disrespected, even mocked him. But another part, the rational, strategic part, knew this wasn't just personal. What he had witnessed might be just a symptom of something far more widespread. How many other locations were operating like this? How many talented individuals had been overlooked? How many great employees had quit in silence? "No," Daniel replied. "That's all. Thank you." He pulled away from the pickup window but didn't leave the parking lot. Instead, he found a discreet corner where he could watch the entire drive-thru lane. He opened the paper bag. The burger inside was cold, the lettuce wilted, pickles clumped on one side, the patty off-center. He took a bite anyway, not to enjoy it, but to absorb the truth with all his senses. Outside, the cars crept along sluggishly. Through the large front windows, Daniel saw Brett leaning against the counter, eyes glued to his phone, while an older female employee, likely not one of the in-group, struggled to manage the orders on her own amid the chaos. Daniel picked up his phone. His finger hovered over the screen as he scrolled to a name. Lauren Parker, one of the first people to believe in him. A colleague, a friend, and the only regional supervisor he trusted to act without needing a reason. She picked up on the second ring. "Daniel, what's going on? You almost never call during restaurant hours." Daniel kept his gaze on Brett through the window, his voice steady but laden with thought. "No, Warren, something's wrong." Brett had disappeared from view. Meanwhile, the drive-thru line continued to grow, as if no one realized that among them sat a man, grappling with the crumbling faith in a company he had built from scratch. "It's bad," Daniel said quietly into the phone, his voice low as if each word was drawn from deep disappointment. "Lauren, how soon can you meet me?" "What's happening?" she asked urgently, worry in her tone. Daniel drew a long breath, trying to stay calm but resolute. "I think we have a serious problem with our management structure, maybe even the whole system. I need your help to find out how far it spread. Tell me where and when." As Daniel gave her the meeting details, a strong intuition stirred in his chest, the sense that what he'd uncovered today was just the tip of the iceberg. The conversation he'd overheard felt like a door creaking open, revealing what could be the true causes behind declining sales, rising complaints, and the widening gap between the company's original vision and its current reality. But what he didn't know yet was whether he could fix it before it spiraled beyond his control. Daniel's finger hovered over the ignition. Logic told him to leave, meet Lauren, and start putting together a professional action plan. But his heart, the heart of a founder who had poured blood and sweat into every brick of this empire, wouldn't let him drive away. "Not yet. Calm more time," he whispered, starting the engine. He circled back and merged into the drive-thru lane again, this time at the very end. But this time, he wasn't just observing, he was preparing. He placed his phone on the passenger seat and activated the voice recorder, not for legal reasons, but to confirm what he had heard, to make sure his disappointment as a founder wasn't clouding his judgment. 15 minutes later, Daniel was back at the speaker box. Static crackled before a different voice came through. "Welcome to Burger Barrel. What can I get for you?" Before Daniel could answer, Brett's unmistakable baritone rang out again in the background, tightening Daniel's jaw. "Tyler, get on register 3. Send Megan to the drive-thru." A quiet protest, "But she just started yesterday." "Yeah, she's my girl's sister. I gotta look out for family, right? You got a problem with that?" Silence, then a defeated voice. "No, sir." Daniel felt his anger swell in his chest. This wasn't just nepotism. It was blatant, shameless abuse of power. A female voice came through the headset. "Sorry for the wait. Welcome to Burger Barrel. How can I help you?" "Try that. Just a small fries," Daniel said, choosing the simplest item to extend his time at the window. "It will be $2.19 at the first window." He pulled forward slowly, keeping the window down despite the midday heat. From the open kitchen, he caught snippets of conversation among the staff. "Mark's application looked decent, but we already promised that spot to Amber's cousin. Just delete the bad reviews from the app. Corporate only checks the overall score. If they didn't want us hiring family, they shouldn't have given us full hiring control." Each offhand comment felt like another blade slicing into the heart of a man who had once built this business on trust and transparency. Daniel could now see exactly why things were falling apart. At the payment window, a young woman fumbled awkwardly at the register. Her name tag read Megan, confirming everything Brett had said. She was nervous, clearly untrained. "Sorry," she mumbled, eyes down. "Still learning." "No worries," Daniel replied kindly, his tone sincere. "First day on drive-thru?" "Yeah. I started yesterday. Brett said I should be on counter, but then he changed his mind." "How'd you get the job?" Daniel asked, playing the part of the curious customer. Megan's face lit up, completely unaware of the weight behind the question. "My sister knows Brett. He said they were hiring, and I didn't even need an interview. Pretty sweet, huh?" "Very convenient," Daniel replied softly, handing over the exact change. At the pickup window, Brett reappeared, laughing into his phone. "Yeah. Friday's schedule is done. Got your brother the morning shift like you asked. Told him he better show up this time, though." He noticed Daniel waiting, lowered his voice, but Daniel still caught every word. "Corporate's sending out those satisfaction surveys again. Tell your folks to rate us 5 stars. I'll comp their meals next time." Brett hung up and grabbed the small fries, shoving them through the window without looking. Small fries. Daniel didn't take them immediately. He looked Brett straight in the eyes, calm and unflinching. Sounds like you've got quite the system going here. Brett paused, eyes narrowing briefly before stretching into a half smile. You mean all the family connections? Daniel kept his tone even, as if making casual conversation. I've noticed everyone here seems connected, like a small community. Brett laughed, shaking his head. Yeah, we take care of our own. The guys at corporate don't get it. They're too busy staring at charts and numbers. The guys at corporate. Daniel repeated that phrase in his mind like a giant question mark. This wasn't just about one store or one bad manager. This was a system rotting from the inside, and it was quietly corroding the very legacy he had built with his own hands. I honestly don't even know what those corporate suits do anymore, Brett said with a laugh, as if Daniel had just told a joke. They trust us small-town managers way too much. All they care about are the numbers, right? So we give them what they want. Satisfied customers, low turnover, everything looking perfect on paper. He leaned slyly out the window, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret. Truth is, this place basically runs itself. I just make sure the right people get hired and paid. And who decides who the right people are? Daniel asked, voice calm but laced with quiet vigilance. The ones who understand how this system really works, Brett said with a wink. Family, friends, people who know how to keep their mouths shut about how things really go down. And qualifications, experience? Brett scoffed. You sound just like corporate. I can teach anyone to flip a burger, but I can't teach loyalty. And family? They're loyal. Outsiders, they just stir the pot. Stir it how? Daniel asked, his gaze sharpening. Complaining about favoritism, snitching to district supervisors, expecting raises based on performance, Brett said, making air quotes, clearly mocking the very values Daniel had once written into the company handbook. And what if someone from corporate found out? Daniel asked, still keeping his tone casual. No one ever does, Brett said with a laugh, handing over the bag of fries and giving another wink. Those suit and tie guys never leave the office. And if something does make it up the chain, I just tell them the complainers are problem employees who don't fit our culture. Works every time. Daniel took the fries, feeling like he'd just been punched in the chest. What Brett was bragging about wasn't just unfair. It was well-oiled corruption. Organized, practiced, and shameless. Impressive system, Daniel said, his stomach turning. 3 years in the making, Brett said proudly. I've got 2 other managers at nearby locations doing the same thing now. We look out for each other, that's how it grows. A car horn honked behind them. Brett glanced over his shoulder and slammed the window shut. Enjoy the fries, buddy. Daniel said nothing. He drove straight to a nearby gas station and parked. The bag of fries sat untouched on the seat next to him. He remained still, eyes fixed on the restaurant in the distance. Brett's words played on a loop in his head like a worn-out cassette, each repetition deepening the pit growing in his gut. This wasn't just about a bad manager. This was a network, a shadow system, a growing darkness beneath the company he had once built with vision, purpose, and integrity. Brett wasn't just hiring family. He was creating a culture of silence, manipulating customer reviews, and neutralizing oversight from corporate. Worse yet, he was spreading that model to other stores. Daniel picked up his phone and called Lauren again. I need you at headquarters in an hour. It's urgent. What's going on? Lauren's voice was tense. Pull every personnel file, customer complaint, and performance review from Brett Madigan's location over the past 3 years. And the 2 nearest branches as well. This is serious? Worse than I thought. Daniel watched the restaurant in the distance. I believe Burger Barrel's been infiltrated, and we need to know how far the rot has spread before it kills the whole system. Daniel sat there a few minutes longer, quietly observing. Employees came and went with the shift change. Faces he once thought of as part of a big, extended family now seemed like pawns in a decaying system. The cold burger, the soggy fries. symbols of a dream falling apart piece by piece. The bright red and yellow burger barrel sign reflected the late afternoon sunlight, the smiling wooden barrel mascot grinning, as if unaware of what was unfolding beneath its roof. Once, that mascot had represented quality, opportunity, integrity. Now, it seemed to mock him with its vacant grin. His phone buzzed. Lauren was at the office. "I'll be there in 20, Daniel said, starting the engine. But before he pulled away, he glanced back one last time. A young man in a burger barrel uniform emerged from the side door, shoulders slumped. He glanced around warily before lighting a cigarette, his expression far older than his years. Daniel wondered, was he one of the outsiders? Someone watching less qualified coworkers rise just because they had connections? One of the quiet ones, forced to swallow his frustration in silence? "I can't believe this," Lauren said as Daniel entered the conference room. The table was piled high with folders. "The turnover rate at Brett's location is barely 10% annually. The company average is 40%. Daniel nodded grimly. "Because he's not hiring and firing based on performance. He's building a dynasty." Lauren, a sharp, seasoned woman in her early 50s who had been with him since the third store, adjusted her glasses, her expression heavy. "I should have caught this. Those numbers were too perfect." "We both missed it," Daniel said, "because we were looking at results, not how those results were achieved." His gaze shifted to the wall where framed photos from the company's early days hung. Photos of himself and the first burger barrel team. Some were ex-cons, some were single parents who needed flexible schedules. Others were immigrants with little English but enormous drive. Every one of them smiling, proud of what they'd earned. Not handed, not inherited, but earned. "Do you remember why we started this?" Daniel asked softly, pointing at the photos. Lauren nodded silently, her eyes welling with memories. Second chances, fair opportunities, advancement based on merit, not who you know. "Exactly," Daniel said, closing his eyes, letting the memories crash over him like waves. 12 years ago. "You're insane, Dan," his brother once said. "Fast food is a battlefield. If you want to survive, you've got to cut corners, take shortcuts." Back then, Daniel stood in a run-down, vacant building, the future unclear, but his eyes burning with determination. "That's exactly why I'm doing this," he said. "To prove there's still another way." And he invested everything, his savings, his inheritance, even mortgaged the house he lived in, to build that dream. Now that very dream was under threat. When Daniel first walked into the bank to request a loan for the initial burger barrel location, the loan officer couldn't help but laugh when he presented his business model. A fast food chain based on ethics and fairness. "You won't make it through the first year," the man said with absolute certainty. But Daniel did more than survive. He expanded to a second store, then a third, and eventually dozens more. He personally trained every early manager, ensured transparent hiring practices, and only promoted based on merit. He had once kept everything in his own hands. Every brick in the company's culture had been laid by him. When did he start letting go? When did he stop visiting stores, stop listening to employees with his whole heart, and start trusting cold numbers on spreadsheets? "Daniel?" Lauren's voice pulled him back to the present. She put hands all over him, lifting vehicles, creating sparks of light. Daniel lowered his voice like he might tell the group's mission. "It's Daniel, Lauren. Just let me say this. It's to Brown Newmere." Daniel leaned in. A series of customer complaints that had never made it to regional defense. All handled at the store level. He skimmed them. Rude employees, cold food, blatant favoritism, even harassment allegations dismissed without investigation. And every single one marked resolved by Brett, with no explanation of how. "Look at this too," Lauren said, flipping to the employee performance reviews. Names like Martinez, Thompson, and Washington, all rated poorly despite being praised in customer feedback. Meanwhile, names like Jackson, Madigan, and Porter Brett's surname and known associates were rated outstanding, even with records of tardiness and policy violations. "He's running a shadow screening system," Daniel muttered, "pushing out anyone not in his circle. And the worst part is, I gave him the power to do it." "This isn't your fault," Lauren said, meeting his eyes. "Isn't it?" Daniel stood and began pacing the room. "I built what I thought was a fair system, then stepped back, assuming people would honor it. I got too comfortable in this office, trusted the data instead of hearing it from the people directly." He stopped in front of the window, looking out at the city skyline. "I forgot what it felt like to be in the trenches." Lauren stepped beside him. "So, what's our next move?" Daniel turned, eyes sharpened like a blade newly honed after years of neglect. "We need to know if this is isolated or spreading. The 2 stores Brett mentioned, pull everything. And we need to interview everyone, current and former staff." "This will get out fast," Lauren warned, pragmatic. "Once we start asking questions, it'll reach Brett." "Then we do it discreetly," Daniel said. "Confidential interviews. NDAs. I've got an old friend who runs a private investigation firm. She can help collect statements that can't be traced back to us. And the surprise audits? We'll handle those ourselves," Daniel replied, a sly smile crossing his face. "They're expecting suits from corporate? Let's give them retired couple Ralph and Marge." Lauren raised an eyebrow. "You want me to pretend to be your wife? I want you beside me as we uncover the rot, before it kills what we've built with our lives." She didn't hesitate. "Always. But, Daniel..." She paused. "What if this goes deeper than Brett? What if others are already following his lead?" The room fell silent, the question slicing through the air like a blade, voicing the fear already forming in Daniel's mind. "Then we clean house," he said firmly, eyes shifting to the wall of framed photos. The faces of those early employees, people who had once placed their faith in him and the values he preached. "I let them down. I let myself drift away from the heartbeat of my own company." His fist clenched. "But I swear, Lauren, I will make it right, even if I have to rebuild it all from scratch." Lauren placed a hand on his shoulder, her gaze steady. "We'll start with the ones who were silenced. The truth is out there. We just have to listen." Daniel nodded, the weight of responsibility pressing on his chest like a stone. He had created Burger Barrel to be different, to be a beacon of hope in an industry known for exploitation. Now, he had to face a bitter truth. It had become everything he once fought against. "Tomorrow," he said with quiet determination, "we begin taking it all back." "Remind me again, why am I wearing this ridiculous outfit?" Lauren whispered as she adjusted her gray wig and oversized glasses. Daniel, sporting a fake mustache and a tweed jacket that made him look like a retired history professor, scanned the Burger Barrel dining area. "Because Brett knows every district manager by face, we need to stay invisible." It had been 3 weeks since Daniel's drive-thru revelation. 3 weeks of quiet, meticulous investigation, and what they had uncovered chilled him to the core. "Table 7 just got their food," Lauren murmured, scribbling in her notepad. 27 minutes from order to delivery." Daniel nodded, watching a teenage server drop the plates unceremoniously in front of a family of 4. The buns were stale, the fries limp. The parents exchanged weary glances, but said nothing. They were used to it. "Fourth ignored complaint today," he noted, adding it to his own tracking sheet. "And the server is Brandon Porter," Lauren added. "Brett's neighbor's son. 2 months on the job and already has supervisor privileges. 3 customer complaints for rudeness." Daniel clenched his jaw. What they'd uncovered was so blatant it was almost absurd. A shameless web of favoritism. Later that afternoon, they met with Sophia Chen, the private investigator Daniel had hired. Her office was located in a nearby town, far from any ties to Burger Barrel. "I've completed 48 interviews with current and former employees," Sophia reported, sliding a thick folder across her desk. The findings are very clear. Daniel opened the file, though he already knew what he would find. Every testimony had been meticulously compiled and cross-referenced, painting a massive portrait of undeniable truth. One Daniel could no longer ignore. Desirable shifts consistently go to relatives or friends of management, Sophia explained, flipping through the documents. Outsiders, employees without connections, are routinely assigned the worst hours, often just below the threshold for benefits eligibility. Lauren flipped through employee statements, her expression growing heavier with every page. "This is worse than we thought," she whispered. "There are serious issues in the hiring process as well," Sophia continued. Several interviewees reported being asked inappropriate personal questions. Anyone who wasn't a relative was routinely rejected under vague reasons like not a culture fit, even when their resumes were fully qualified. Daniel paused on a particularly shocking statement. "Brett told me directly that my job was to protect the family. When I asked what that meant, he explained that complaints against relatives were to be buried, time cards could be edited if needed, and no mistakes were to ever reach corporate." Sophia looked up, her tone growing more somber. "It doesn't end there." He flipped to another section of the documents, marked with a red tab. "I found evidence of numerous serious policy violations that were systematically ignored." The list was staggering. Harassment claims dismissed without investigation. Employees showing up intoxicated still allowed to work their shifts. Suspected theft left unaddressed. Food safety protocols completely disregarded. "All of these involved the manager's inner circle," Daniel whispered. Each word in the report felt like a physical weight crushing his chest. "And it's not just Brett's location," Sophia confirmed. "The two other stores, Riverdale and North Point, show the same pattern of management." Lauren pulled out a spreadsheet from her file. "I compiled customer feedback from all three locations. There are these sudden spikes of 5-star reviews, clearly coordinated, followed by waves of genuine 1- and 2-star reviews saying things like, 'Cold food, rude staff, and worst burger barrel I've ever visited.'" Daniel sat in silence, staring at the data, a horrific mosaic revealing itself in undeniable clarity. A shadow operating system had been created inside the very company he had spent his life building. "The managers of these three stores communicate regularly," Sophia said. "They shuffle staff between locations, align their reports to match for corporate, and share tactics on bypassing internal audits." Daniel closed the file, the weight of failure chilling him like a ghost at his back. "How many people are involved?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "At least 60 employees across the three stores," Lauren answered. "About 20% are active participants. The rest are either silent beneficiaries or outsiders who've learned to keep their heads down." Daniel leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. He felt like he couldn't breathe. This was no longer about firing one person. The rot had infected 3 restaurants, 10% of the entire Burger Barrel chain. "There's one more thing," Sophia said quietly. "I've found signs that this model is starting to spread to 2 additional locations. The relationships are still forming, but the behavioral patterns are already familiar." Daniel stood abruptly and walked to the window. Outside, people moved about their day, laughing, talking, unaware that inside this modest office a storm was gathering. "Daniel," Lauren's voice was soft but firm, "what are we going to do?" He turned around. His face was calm now, but his eyes were cold with resolve. On his shoulders lay not just responsibility, but the very soul of a dream once lit by fire. "When I founded Burger Barrel," Daniel began slowly, "I wanted to build something different. A place where performance mattered more than connections, where every customer was treated equally, no matter who they were." He looked down at the documents spread across the table, undeniable proof that his vision had been twisted, exploited, betrayed. "I need to remember why I started, and I need everyone else to remember too." Lauren leaned forward. You're not just talking about firing the ringleaders, are you? No. Danielle nodded. I want to send a message. A wake-up call that will echo across the entire Burger Barrel system. He began organizing the documents into neat stacks. Sophia, I need the final report on my desk by tomorrow morning. Lauren, schedule a district-wide meeting at headquarters. Mandatory for all managers from the affected locations. What are you planning? Lauren asked, though something in her eyes said she already knew. A reckoning, Daniel said, eyes unblinking. Brett thinks corporate is full of clueless pencil pushers. He's about to meet the founder, face to face. They think corporate is just a bunch of number crunchers, Daniel said, his voice low and steady. It's time Brett met the person who started this company. A grim smile played at the corners of his mouth, not out of victory, but from the pain of confronting something he had allowed to rot from the inside out. And I want this meeting recorded, for every employee and manager in the system to see. At Burger Barrel corporate headquarters, the atmosphere was unusually charged. The large conference room, typically reserved for quarterly reviews and shareholder meetings, had been transformed under Lauren's quiet direction. A horseshoe arrangement of tables faced a podium and a large screen. Small cameras had been discreetly placed throughout the room, capturing every angle without drawing attention. They're arriving, Lauren reported, peeking through the blinds at the parking lot now full of managers' cars. Daniel nodded, adjusting his tie in his phone's reflection. The scruffy man in a ball cap and t-shirt was gone. In his place stood a CEO in a tailored charcoal suit, calm and unyielding. Are the live streams up? They're ready, Lauren confirmed. Every location with a functioning office computer is tuned in. Over 25 stores watching this moment. Daniel took a deep breath. And Brett just pulled up in a brand new BMW that probably costs more than his annual salary. A humorless smile flickered across Daniel's lips. Of course he did. Thank you all for joining us at today's routine district meeting, Lauren began smoothly, her voice as composed as ever. We'll keep things brief so you can return to your restaurants promptly. 27 managers sat around the table. Some looked bored, others scrolled through their phones. Brett Madigan lounged in a back chair, legs crossed, whispering something to the Riverdale manager that made them both chuckle. First, we'll go over a few corporate updates, Lauren continued, followed by a review of last quarter's customer satisfaction metrics. The same old, Brett muttered, loud enough for others to hear. Death by PowerPoint. A few hesitant laughs rippled through the room. Lauren smiled slightly. Actually, today we're doing something different. We've just completed a special project, and now it's time to share the results. The screen behind her lit up. A sequence of customer review data appeared, all pulled from Brett's, Riverdale's, and North Point's locations. Lauren pointed to the graphs. Massive spikes of 5-star reviews appearing, right after waves of 1- and 2-star complaints. We noticed some irregularities, she said. There's a clear pattern of manipulation. Brett leaned forward slightly, tension creeping across his face. We also reviewed staffing data, Lauren said as she switched to a family tree chart. Some locations show an unusually high concentration of employees sharing last names or home addresses. The air in the room turned heavy. Everyone seemed to sense that something serious was about to unfold. And before we go any further, I'd like everyone to watch a short video, Lauren said, clicking to the next slide. The screen displayed hidden camera footage from Brett's restaurant. In it, he was seen altering time cards, dismissing a female employee's harassment report, and laughing with his assistant manager. As long as corporate doesn't know, we're fine. The room fell deathly still. No one moved. What is this? Brett snapped, jumping to his feet. You're spying on your own managers? This is entrapment. Lauren remained calm. Your employment contract clearly states that all areas of the restaurant may be monitored. But that's beside the point. What matters is what's shown in this video. Would you like to explain it, Brett? His face flushed deep red. This is taken out of context. You've twisted everything." A new voice broke the silence. Did we? The room turned as Daniel emerged from the side door, striding to the podium. Brett took a step back, eyes wide, not just in recognition of the CEO, but because he realized this was the dumb customer he'd mocked in the drive-thru. "It's you." Brett exhaled. "Yes." Daniel nodded. "Me. Though you probably remember me better in a faded cap holding a cold burger, while you laughed and called customers sheep. While you bragged about keeping paychecks in the bloodline." A wave of murmurs swept through the room. Brett looked around for support, but found only averted gazes and stony silence. "Mr. Cross." Brett stammered. "Quiet." Daniel cut him off, his gaze burning through Brett. "You forgot that this brand was built on sweat, sacrifice, and trust. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed every person who ever believed in you." He turned to address the entire room. "What you've just seen isn't an isolated incident. It's a system, a cancer. And starting today, Burger Barrel is cutting it out, no matter the cost." "There's clearly been a misunderstanding," Brett began, trying to sound respectful. "There's no misunderstanding," Daniel said coldly. "We have statements from 64 employees, past and present. We have falsified timesheets. We have documented food safety violations, covered-up harassment claims, and systematic discrimination." He gestured to the thick folders placed before each manager. "It's all there, every detail." Brett's breath faltered. The bravado drained from his face. "Everyone does this," he mumbled, searching for something to cling to. "It's not just me." "This excuse won't save you," Daniel said, locking eyes with him. "I've personally visited every restaurant in this region over the past 3 weeks. Most are following the rules. You, however, you created a cesspool. You made something ugly." Daniel turned to the room and to the employees watching from across the chain via live stream. "To everyone watching this right now," he said, "understand this. Today marks the end of an era. Burger Barrel was founded on fairness and hard work, principles that are not up for debate." His eyes returned to Brett, now slumped in his chair, pale and silent. "Brett Madigan, you're terminated, effective immediately." A wave of shock swept through the room. "That security will escort you to your office to collect personal belongings only. All company property, including the phone containing incriminating messages, will remain with us." Brett stirred, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You can't do this." "I can, and I just did," Daniel replied firmly. "Jason Wells from Riverdale, Patricia Gaines from North Point. Your contracts are also terminated as of today." 3 faces turned white. No one spoke. The silence was suffocating. Like a verdict, no one dared to contest. "As for the rest of you," Daniel continued, "I'll say this once. Starting tomorrow, the entire system will undergo a full personnel audit. Anyone found to have participated in or benefited from nepotism, favoritism, or policy violations, directly or indirectly, will be removed." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle like a blade in the air. "Burger Barrel used to stand for something good. I lost sight of that. But you exploited it. You dragged it into the dirt. That ends today." The doors opened. Security entered. Brett suddenly lunged at Daniel, face contorted with rage. "You self-righteous fraud," he bellowed. "You don't know what it's like to run these places. Your precious principles don't work in the real world. Reality isn't as clean as your manuals." The guards restrained him swiftly. Daniel didn't flinch. "I know more than you think," he replied, his voice calm. "I've worked every station in this restaurant. I've flipped burgers, mopped floors, taken orders through the dinner rush without a break. I know the harsh reality, but I also know that reality doesn't require corruption." Brett was dragged from the room, still shouting accusations, but no one moved. No one stood up for him. Near the back, Daniel spotted a young woman in a Burger Barrel uniform. Her face was familiar, one of the outsiders from Brett's store, one of the few who hadn't quit. She looked at Daniel with eyes full of hope, gratitude. In her gaze, Daniel saw something he feared he had lost. Belief. The belief that fairness still had a place, and that integrity could still win. "It won't be easy," Daniel said to the room of stunned managers. "Rebuilding trust never is. But today is the first step." 6 weeks later, a silver sedan quietly pulled into the drive-thru lane of a Burger Barrel. Daniel wore his old faded ball cap, just like the early days when he used to check on locations without anyone recognizing him. The restaurant looked the same as ever, the familiar red and yellow sign, the grinning wooden barrel mascot. But inside, Daniel knew everything had changed. "Welcome to Burger Barrel. What can I get started for you today?" The voice from the speaker came through quickly, clearly, and sincerely. No trace of forced cheer. No tone of contempt. "I'll have a classic burger. Medium. Just the sandwich." "Yes, sir. That'll be $4.79. Please proceed to the next window." "Thank you for choosing Burger Barrel." Daniel lightly tapped the gas. He glanced at the dashboard clock. 42 seconds from greeting to completed order. A number well above expectations. At the pickup window, a young man in a neatly pressed uniform greeted him with a warm, genuine smile. $4.79, sir," he said. His name tag read, Marcus, assistant manager. Daniel accepted the bag. A smile crept onto his lips. Not for the burger, but for the trust being restored in a place he once feared was beyond saving. Marcus's smile reached all the way to his eyes. A real, human smile, not the artificial kind worn by those working under pressure. As Daniel handed over his card, he casually remarked, like a regular customer making small talk, "Seems like things are running pretty smoothly today." "Thank you, sir," Marcus replied proudly. "We've been really focused on improving service times lately. Our new manager is great at training the team." "New manager?" Daniel asked, his tone light and casual. "Nah. Ever since that big shake-up from corporate, she's amazing. Doesn't just bark orders, actually teaches us how to do things. Really cares." Marcus handed back the card and receipt. "Your burger will be ready at the next window in about a minute. We make everything fresh now." Daniel slowly rolled forward, glancing through the kitchen window. Inside, the staff moved with precision and flow, like a well-rehearsed orchestra. No one was on their phone. No one stood idle. Everything was orderly, focused, but not tense. A professionalism born of pride, not fear. A woman in a manager's uniform stepped to the window with a burger in hand. She froze for a split second as her eyes met Daniel's, recognition flashing with a touch of nervousness. "Mr. Cross? I didn't realize it was you," she said, offering the burger with a respectful, human tone. Not fear, but reverence. "I'm Zoe Taylor, the new manager here." "Just one of my usual stops, Zoe," Daniel replied warmly. "And please, call me Daniel." Zoe nodded, her smile widening. "We've made a lot of changes since everything happened." "I can tell," Daniel said. "Tell me a bit about them." The nervousness in her eyes faded, replaced by pride. "We've completely overhauled the scheduling system, made it fair and transparent. The new anonymous hiring system from corporate is working great. Our turnover's higher than the numbers Brett used to report, but that's because those numbers were fake. Now we're actually keeping the people who belong here. And the staff, how are they adjusting?" "It was rough at first," Zoe admitted, lowering her voice. "Especially for those who benefited from the old system. Some quit the moment Brett left, but the rest, the ones who never got noticed, they're stepping up in incredible ways. They were never given a real chance. Now they have one, and they're grabbing it with both hands." A horn honked behind him. Daniel waved an apology. "I should let you get back to it." "Wait," Zoe said quickly. "Daniel, Would you mind checking if the burger looks right? We're training some new kitchen staff." Daniel unwrapped the sandwich. The bun was perfectly toasted, crisp lettuce, evenly sliced tomatoes. The patty was centered, cooked to a precise medium well, nothing like the cold mess he'd once been served. "It's perfect," he said. "You and the team are doing excellent work, Zoe." Zoe smiled, and it was the kind that carried genuine pride. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot to us." Later that afternoon, Daniel parked in the same spot where, months earlier, he had overheard Brett's damning words through the drive-thru speaker. He took the final bite of his burger, this time flavorful, fresh, and fulfilling. A reminder that real change was possible. Through the front windows, he watched customers being greeted warmly, orders delivered on time, the dining area spotless. A place once rotten with neglect now felt reborn. His phone rang. Lauren's name appeared on the screen. "I just finished the 3-month report," she said. "The results are promising." "I'm sitting at Brett's old location right now," Daniel replied. "The transformation is night and day." "That matches the data," Lauren said. "Customer satisfaction is up 37% at the reformed stores. Job applications are way up too. Turns out people want to work somewhere that's actually fair." "Who would have guessed?" Daniel chuckled softly. "A revolutionary idea." "There's more," Lauren continued. "The 2 locations that started copying Brett's methods? Total turnaround. Their managers are now the strongest supporters of the new system." "Fear's a strong motivator," Daniel nodded. "It's not just fear," Lauren countered. "The anonymous reporting system is working. People feel heard. And the mentorship program you pushed for? It's shifting the culture from the inside." Through the glass, Daniel watched a young employee help an elderly customer to her seat, then return to carefully clean a table, not out of obligation, but because he cared. "Any regrets?" Lauren asked after a pause. Daniel thought about it. The past few months had been some of the hardest of his life, rebuilding from near ruin, launching new oversight systems, personally hiring new managers, working longer hours than when he first started the business. "Only that I didn't catch it sooner," he said finally. "That I let myself drift away from what was really happening in my restaurants." "But you fixed it," Lauren reminded him. "That's what matters, not just me," Daniel corrected. "We did, and we'll keep fixing it. Wherever we have to." He ended the call and looked one last time at the restaurant before starting his car. The Burger Barrel sign caught the glow of the setting sun. The smiling barrel mascot no longer seemed to mock him. It looked hope. Daniel had built this company on one simple belief: fairness matters, and anyone willing to work for it deserves a chance. For a time, that belief had been twisted by people who mistook trust for weakness. But from that very drive-thru window, Daniel had heard the truth and chosen to act. And in that choice, he reclaimed the soul of the company he once dreamed of. As he drove off, Daniel glanced at his schedule. 3 more locations to visit today, each one a new opportunity to listen, to observe, to ensure the legacy he built stayed true to its values. Trust wasn't given anymore. It was earned, and Burger Barrel was stronger for it. The lesson had been bitter, but necessary. And sometimes, Daniel thought, you have to lose your way to remember why the road ever mattered in the first place.